I'm going to let Francis kick things off. The way that we're going to run this is we have five kind of overall sections. We're going to start with big picture reaction, go into top line drivers and commentary, bottom line drivers and commentary, the future of Palantir for 2021, and then we might do some Q&A. Possibly bring up, 5 to 6 people to chat with us and ask some questions. But we're going to start off with that big picture. So, Francis, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much again, Wolf, for organizing this. Really appreciate it a lot. Pretty excited to chat with you guys. We just thought it'd be we have lots of passionate Palantir shareholders on Twitter, and so we just thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring everyone together in Twitter Spaces and just have a conversation about this, and just share some of our key reflections and some of the key highlights we got from the reports. So I think we just plan to do this in a very structured format, even though this is pretty going to be pretty informal for today. But we're just going to first of all, so I have Runaway Investor, I have Sachin Sharma, and I have Palantir Daily, who are going to be co-hosting this with me. And so we're just going to go around the room and just have a conversation around. So we have four major topics that we're going to be talking about. So the first piece is just big picture reaction to Palantir today. So what was just big picture? What was the biggest thing that stood out to everyone today? So we'll just have a go around for that piece. Then the second level, we'll talk about top line revenue drivers. So we'll talk about some of the revenue growth that we saw, how impressed were people about it. We'll talk about the government, the commercial revenue growth. So everything top line related. That would be kind of our next section, talk about that. And then the third section would be more around the bottom line drivers. So we're going to talk about stock-based compensation. That's been a major topic for all Palantir shareholders. So stock-based compensation, some of the free cash flow margins that we saw, lots of the gross margins improvements that we did see, so we'll talk about that piece. And then the last section of this Twitter Spaces would be about just talking about the future of Palantir. What are you guys most excited for the rest of 2021? So are we Bitcoin? Is it the IBM partnerships? Is it new contracts? So the last section of the Twitter Spaces would be about what we see going forward for the future, as well as guidance. And then afterwards, we'd be very happy to host a few of you from the audience just to come participate, and just share your thoughts. So if you have any questions for any of the speakers today, so that's what we got for today. So first of all, let's just go through big picture. So I don't know. I think everyone at this time would have already gone through the report. I would imagine at this point everyone should be pretty familiar. I think I probably don't need to repeat that as much. But if anyone wants me to, you could always. But I'd expect everyone to have some kind of at least a shareholder letter with you as we go through the spaces. So big picture, I'll maybe start with Runaway Investor, and then we'll go to Sachin, and we go to Palantir Daily, and we'll go to Palantir News. So in that order. So I'd like to ask you guys, big picture, what did you guys think about today? Just very high level. What was your reactions to the report then? Just high level.
Yeah, so today was a pretty interesting day. So they did beat expectations by a bit. Overall, coming into earnings, especially with the stock price down like nearly like low 18s, and I think at one point we hit $17. Obviously, it's been pretty tough for investors, and the frustrating thing I think a lot of Palantir investors are going through is the whole stock-based compensation thing. Palantir does give a lot into stock-based compensations, but what we saw today was again what the company's been mentioning previously. So the whole idea behind the like stock-based compensation is that essentially like stock dilution will be low, but there are no plans for the stock-based compensation stopping anytime soon. So I see this in two ways, especially from today. Like we saw some really good numbers. We saw total revenue grow 49%, US commercial grew 70%, 72%, government revenue grew 83%. So overall, I was really happy with what we were seeing today. But it's the whole stock-based compensation is still a struggle for many investors to understand, but we need to realize that in order to acquire talent, it costs money.
Perfect. Totally agree with you on that point. I think when we go to the third section of our spaces, yeah, we'll dive a little bit more into the SBC aspect of things. But good to hear. Yeah, it's a concern for everyone. So Sachin, what are your thoughts?
Hey guys, First, a disclaimer that whatever I say today, it's just my opinion. Nothing to relate into my employer on this part because I'm just, participating as a private investor in this chat. Overall, when I look at the earnings, I think I'm satisfied. It is in line because if anybody has discussed me, that for me the biggest metrics is revenue, and they did pretty good in that. I'm taking my benchmark at 50%, and they are close to that. Two things which I was a bit disappointed somewhat or a bit low was that I don't understand in detail that why they are giving 30% guidance, because when I see the company and revenue growth, I see it's very aggressive. It should do better than that. So, in my opinion, that's too much sandbagging. The second was I was expecting Alex to be on call. I think you can always go and record a 2 minute video or 3 minute video to put there. So apart from that, which are like two non-cash items, I think earning wise, I'm satisfied. Back to you guys.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I share those sentiments with you as well. Ponce Daily, what was your high level overview thoughts on the report? I think you're on
Yeah,
mute.
so kind of
I think his service might be a little spotty. He mentioned that.
Sure, maybe Ponce Daily, if you want to refresh your maybe restart it again, we could come back to you again. Maybe Ponce News. What was your thoughts on just high level on the reports?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, all right, great.
Oop,
So,
can you hear me?
fantastic report. Oh, okay, sorry.
Palantir Daily, your service is a little spotty and it's cutting in and out. So you might want to leave the
Can you
space
hear
and
me now?
refresh or switch. No, we can't hear you well. You might want to switch over on Wi-Fi or something. But Palantir News, go ahead first, and then we'll come back to you, Palantir Daily.
All right, you really can't ask for much. 49% growth, and we're seeing the stock price growing how many percentage? 17% up today, just one day alone. That's fantastic. But just in terms of the report, I think they're doing great. They have a lot of cash. You guys talked about that they're interested to develop. That's a good, that's a very good sign that we can see from a 17 years old company. So I'm quite satisfied with the earnings overall. Not to mention, they also talked about how they partnered with Lilium and Sarkos, and they're pretty much building up the whole business for Lilium. Did you any of you guys heard about it?
I did. I
So
did.
yeah, so it's very interesting and exciting actually. Yeah, and then I expected more international government growth, to be honest, but overall, I think it was great. Just UK and US alone, a lot of contracts. I'm reading the numbers right now, but yeah, it was great, and we see 72% commercial sector growth. So let's see what the critics have for us this time. Yeah, that's my take for this earning.
Perfect. Lots of good points that you bring up. And yeah, we'll dive through them as we go through the call. Ponte Daily, are you set up? Do you think you're good to go? Ponte Daily, you
I
good?
I don't even see him in here.
Okay. Did you have special situations on? I just
Yes,
wanted to check.
yeah, he's
Okay.
up here.
Hey,
Go
so,
ahead.
hey,
Jason.
thanks. So I think one interesting point was, they added 11 customers, right? So third quarter of last year, as you recall, they had 132 customers. By fourth quarter, they had 139. So their growth in customers was higher. They have 150 now as of 1Q. They also, I believe IBM booked its first Palantir customer, and it was within 16 days of the product's availability. So that makes me a little bit more optimistic for next quarter. They could, if IBM was able to book their first Palantir customer so quickly, people might start seeing the traction and the value proposition of the product. I also think that the 30% long-term revenue growth outlook, is probably conservative, given the type of growth we're seeing. And the reductions in implementation times were also positive. And I think the free cash flow growth of 171 basis points was also a good takeaway from the call.
Correct. Yeah, those are absolutely good points about the reports. Palantir Daily, are you set up now to go? You might want to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that one's happening.
All right, man. Okay, no worries, man. I'll just jump in right here. I think for myself, I think all of you guys nailed down some of the key points that I got from the reports. Some elements that maybe kind of emphasized a lot was Apollo AI on the edge. I think that was an aspect that I'm really quite excited about. And I think a lot of what the improvements that they've made in Apollo AI on the edge and just being able to push updates, software releases, or actually make maybe deployment and operational changes, rather than having your forward deployed engineers, you could now do it all up on the edge, and you could do a lot of these things through Apollo AI. I think what you're getting with this, the benefit of actually having this is a lot of those gross margins improvement. We could see there's a significant amount of margin improvement, operating leverage that's shown across the whole business from the gross margins acceleration that's now at 83% from 63% last year, as well as the operating margins 34%. If I'm not right, if I'm not wrong, that might be a record. I haven't seen that for Palantir in a long time. And so you could see that in the free cash flow margins as well. So I think there's a lot of software deployments and improvements that actually be made. That's huge. So that's something I'm pretty excited that I took away. And in the last piece was the RPO, so the remaining performance obligations and dollar deal value growth in the business actually. So it just shows us that we have a high level of visibility for Palantir's revenue growth going forward. And I agree with most of you guys saying that I believe the guidance is definitely way more conservative for us. So I think that was pretty exciting. Now, my next question for you guys on the top line, while we're talking about the top line revenue drivers for people who are just joining the Twitter Spaces, the next section here is just on the commercial and business growth aspect of this. So, both the government business of Palantir had a 76% growth year over year, and the US government growth is actually accelerating significantly, I think at over 83%. Obviously, we know that's been pushed by the COVID-19 the situation right now, and even maybe this is why we saw the hiring of the new chief medical officer from IBM. So, wanted to get you guys' thoughts on the commercial business growth aspect of things. What was something that maybe stood out to you across those lines? And maybe what are you most excited about? So, We just go again from runaway investor, Sachin, and then special situations, and we'll go all the way again.
Yep. So I think one of the things was if we go back all the way to the double click event. So I think one of the biggest arguments that the bears had was Palantir would be the software is mostly available for only blue chip companies. So I feel like the double click event, it allowed for more medium and smaller side businesses to like hop on and like join Palantir, especially using their software. And like we can see these smaller companies who are joining forward with Palantir and using their software. So this is just going to even accelerate the just the commercial aspect of the business. When you get all these smaller companies who are able to afford the software, it's just going to keep growing and growing, I feel, especially when we're seeing more companies come on board. So that was really exciting seeing that the event essentially did work.
Correct. Totally agree. And I think, yeah, the CEO did mention that the increased interest they're getting from that aspect. Sachin, what was your thoughts on either the commercial or the government business side of things?
Francis, in my line of work, especially, I do strategy consulting. I spend most of time with the Fortune 500 companies, large organizations. When I see the challenges these guys are facing on front, and I think it is not very well understood at this point, is uh, is that this is still is the very early part. And now what we are seeing, like if I see the government business, I think we are seeing now the governments are spending more and more, especially post COVID. And I only expect this number to actually increase. And in my view, this number will go like 5 to 10 fold from here, because it's a very early phase when governments are thinking about AI or like a technology driven procurement supply chain or deployment of logistics. So this number, I'm very positive about it. And what is good in this case is there is literally no competition from conventional competitor what we are looking in commercial. Now, one thing in commercial which is very largely misunderstood is that we see that a lot of companies are being touted as a Palantir competition. But when you try to see that where these companies are actually working, most of these companies are actually in one of the layer of the analytics only. So either they're in the data layer or in the smart layer or in the infrastructure layer. There is rarely a company that is going across 4 layers. And what happens is that when you go across 4 layers, that means your input, output, your connections with all the organization is far nimble than a lot of these patch up solutions. So these patch up solutions works fine on first space because it helps you to get some low hanging fruits. But here we are not. Palantir is not trying to solve low hanging fruits. Palantir is going for as deep as it possible. And for the benefit of listeners, I would ask them to think it in a different in a two dimension, where one dimension is how many different industries and problems one solution can be applied, and the second is what is the impact of that solution. So for example, if you use Microsoft Word, it can go to very lot of industries, but the impact is not that much. Now Palantir has a lot of impact both in terms of breadth and depth, and that is what it makes it unique. And what we are seeing in revenue in terms of government and commercial, these are very early numbers. I expect it to go increase almost 10 to 20 folds in the next 5 to 7 years from here. Back to you guys.
Awesome, awesome. I love that. Is this special situations? I'd like you to mute your
Yeah,
microphone. I think.
some hot mics going on. Some 4th of July in the background. Oh,
That's
real
great.
quick, Francis, before we continue, just so everyone knows, just to everyone who's on here, okay, real quick, there are sometimes problems with spaces, technical difficulties, crashes. If anything along that lines happens, wait 90 seconds and I will recreate the space. And then we will just go from there. So don't worry, we'll come back if it happens. Hopefully it won't happen. There was a new update today. Back to you, Francis.
Awesome, awesome, cool. Sachin, I think you brought up lots of really good points. About the how Palantir meets businesses across the 4 layers of solutions and how we could see a lot more growth, even though the government has fed Palantir a lot of revenue in the last couple of years. there could still be further growth ahead of just ahead of them there and across commercial clients. So I love that piece. Thank you very much. Special situations. I don't know if you're ready to chime in here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the comments, from Runaway. Um, that I think smaller customers will be attracted to the business model going forward. I think the point you made, I think the Apollo AI, the gross margin expansion, if you just forecast that going forward, I think their free cash flow margin could be 45% plus for this year. And if they take that free cash and reinvest in the business, that can allow them to hire more sales reps. I think they hired, was it like 50 sales reps this quarter to expand overseas? I think, it becomes a cycle, right? If your gross margins improve so much, you can then hire more sales reps. So I think that operating leverage is going to be positive for them.
Totally. That's a really, really good point. That's a good point. Yeah, Palantir News. Yeah, go next.
Yeah, I agree with. Sorry, so who spoke right before
Oh,
me?
Jay, special situations.
Yeah, special situations. He brought up a very good point about the sales team. They have like 50 salesperson right now, right? And then they're about to expand to 3 digit, so about around like 100 salesperson just by the end of this year. That's exciting, and they have a lot of cash in hand, and they recently expanded the some of the banks, I think, is Morgan Stanley and two others, RBC, I think. They expanded their commitment to Palantir, basically increased the amount of money they are willing to borrow. So I think it's crucial to have that much money in hand for Palantir right now to expand as much. So I'm not concerned at all about they have what it takes to um, acquire more new customers, and I'm looking forward to some of the numbers from Unlock. I think because it hasn't been announced, it was relatively a new thing, the Palantir Unlock, and I would like to know how many customers actually they how um how many customers they were able to offer the software to them for free, and because Palantir has a very high retention rate, I think they will manage to retain most of them, and that means a lot of customers going forward. Yeah, that's my take.
Very cool. Very cool. I totally agree. And yeah, I think both of you brought up a really great point. The acceleration in the sales team. And as you guys probably know this, I mean, Palantir up until 2017, they had nobody in their sales team. Like, I think they had like zero. Palantir was just primarily the way they spoke to government and attracted and lobbied government for contracts. That was primarily how they did. And it's really exciting to see the acceleration in both the sales team, as you guys mentioned, going down small, medium-sized businesses, as well as yeah, all the cash that they have to reinvest into the business. And I think that also should give a lot of Palantir investors a lot of confidence into the future growth that we could expect from this company going forward. So great point, guys.
Hey,
Palantir
Francis, if
Daily, I hope you're good to go now.
I am. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. I apologize, everyone. I'm connected to Wi-Fi. It should be good to go.
No worries.
And I apologize if I missed anything that you guys said. But to piggyback on, as far as commercial, what stood out to me on the earnings call is they stated since February, the opportunities in the commercial business have increased 2.5 times. And so to me, those are potential clients. And they also stated that active pilots during the same time, active commercial pilots have doubled. And so they specify pilots as clients that have active agreements out, and they anticipate starting and becoming a client. So that's huge to me. And why I think that's so big, and I really don't think it's impacting the revenue right now, is because those pilots, they're on the early stages of the customer life cycle. So one, they're in the acquire phase. So we're not really receiving the revenues yet. That's to come. One thing that was nice as well is Shyam said on the earnings call that clients are coming to Palantir with a greater understanding of their ability and what they can offer them. And he's saying that is increasing the flywheel. And so to me, what that means to me is clients are now coming to Palantir. They know what the software can do. The forward develop engineers no longer need to sell them of avenues that they can enter. These clients are coming knowing these are the different avenues that we can enter. So it's further accelerating that life cycle. So all of these clients that we're gaining right now, they may be in the acquire phase, but they're going to fastly approach through phases 2 and 3, which is nice. And to piggyback on, I think you guys brought up the sales staff. I personally am not of the view that the sales staff really matters. I think what the sales staff is being added for is more so for government acquisition. I personally believe that Palantir is trying to proactively acquire clients through partnerships with their bigger clients. Meaning, I'll take Airbus for example. Airbus is what I would assume is in phase 3 of the customer lifecycle. They are building software on top of Palantir's platform, and they are going out and acquiring the clients. I believe Palantir is trying to develop partnerships or gain clients, large industry giants in separate segments, and they are going to empower them to go out and proactively acquire the clients. And so I don't think the sales staff really matters on the commercial side. The commercial side, though, I will say is super exciting to me. I think we're going to see that grow substantially, and it's going to become like network effects. It's just ever increasing value. The more people that join Skywise that Airbus created, it's just going to make it more valuable for any more airlines to join, and it's going to make the software for Airbus ever more sticky because they're now receiving revenues for a software they created on top of Palantir's platform, and they're subleasing it out. So I think Palantir is just simply trying to go after the large industry giants in different industry verticals and actively or allow them to go out and acquire the clients, which is nice. But yeah, this earnings call, the commercial section of it stood out, and I loved everything about it, really.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you brought up lots of really good points there that there's so many things you brought up there, but fascinating points. Yes, the pilots, that's been a huge, that's really good to see. And I think we're going to see a lot more pilots with Palantir Unlock, right? That's going to be happening this year, potentially. I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to hear a little bit more about the Palantir Unlock and some of the accelerations they're seeing there already. That wasn't spoken about, but yes, that was such a good point about the pilots that we're seeing. I also agree the commercial would play a bigger role, and I think I wrote this in my article saying that I think over the next 3 to 5 years, I believe the commercial business is actually going to be the biggest part of Palantir's business going forward. And I also agree on the sales team too. I also think one of the benefits together with the sales team, even though yes, the sales teams might not be as helpful, but something that actually came out on the call, if you guys followed this, was this ISP and system integrators. I think that's going to be a different channel that Palantir could use to actually attract new clients through just accessing different cloud providers and using those different channels as a way of actually attracting more customers. So pretty exciting piece as well. So awesome. Thanks for that. And then okay, I think we're successfully went through the round. Wolf, I actually wanted to bring you in here. I know you're kind of the host and you're kind of keeping quiet, but I actually wanted to just hear your thoughts. Just give me your broad level overview on the call itself. Just want to make sure we put you in here.
I appreciate you bringing me in. I don't have a ton to add right now to this. I was really, really busy throughout the morning, plus was kind of not feeling the best, so I didn't have time to really examine the entire call and everything. So I'm just learning on here, and this is why I love being the host. Is usually I don't have to come with a ton of information. I just get to ask all the questions, and in this case, you're asking the questions for me, so I just get to listen and learn.
Awesome, awesome. I just want to make sure I just didn't leave you there in the dark. So awesome.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
awesome, guys. In case anyone's just joining if you're just joining the Twitter Spaces, because with Twitter Spaces, I know people are coming in and going out. I just want to do a kind of recap. So far in this call or in the Spaces, we've just talked about some of the key revenue drivers for Palantir, the revenue growth, the government business side of things, the commercial growth, and some of the key items that stood out to us across those business lines. So just kind of a refresher. So now we're going to our third aspect of this spaces. So let's talk about maybe some of the bottom line drivers. So we've talked about growth and we know Palantir is fully in growth mode. Let's talk about some of the bottom line drivers. So a huge focus, and you guys could see this from the Q&A that was actually sent to Palantir, right, from shareholders. So profitability seems to be top of mind for lots of people. Lots of people are really concerned about the profitability side of things, as well as stock-based compensation. So I kind of wanted to go around the room again to just kind of hear you guys' thoughts on how are you guys thinking about the bottom line aspects? Are you guys worried about profitability? How are you guys thinking about stock-based compensation, and some of those bottom line drivers? So, yeah. So let's go with runaway investor again. What were your thoughts on the bottom line?
Yeah, so when we look at the bottom line, we can see that like the I think I mentioned this before, but like the stock-based compensation, that did increase a lot. So we saw for the period $193 million compared to the $54 million that we saw in 2020. I mean, as an investor, this is pretty frustrating, but I do understand that Palantir is growing a lot. And like if we also take a look at this, so this is actually I liked it a lot that I don't think anyone mentioned this. The revenue was $341 million with a cost of revenue of $74 million. When you take a look at the revenue for 2020, they had $230 million, but the cost of revenue was roughly $65 million. So for $10 million of cost of revenue increase, they had an over $100 million for revenue that came in. So that's really good when you take a look at it. So obviously, stock-based compensation is working in a sense, but could they be paying too much? Is it impacting investors? That's a question to ask, and it's frustrating. Free cash flow, I'm not too concerned with. Like we saw gross margins, everything's looking good there in terms of free cash and cross margins, and we're seeing overall revenue increasing. So when we look at the bottom line drivers, I think stock-based compensation is the only thing that is frustrating to me as an investor for Palantir right now, but I can understand it.
Totally. Great point on that piece. Yes, it's a debatable topic. Everyone has different opinions about it, but yeah, I mean, we gotta take it for what it is. So yeah, Sachin, what are your thoughts on the bottom line?
So let me start with stock-based compensation. I think in general, the narrative that is out there and the frustration that comes with investor. I mean, I think it is okay at times, but I think what is more critical so just for I mean, I spent like almost like 1 year research on Palantir because it's my largest position. I don't invest in a lot of companies, so when I was looking in, I found that there was a challenge in Palantir, especially between 2015 and 2020, when some of the investors actually marked their valuation down. So the people had a lot of liquidity crunch that time. Now, one of the challenge which Palantir faced, which is not discussed a lot, is see Palantir had to attract talent from Silicon Valley, and they wanted to avoid giving more in terms of cash from their pocket. So the SBC was the instrument that is being used, and it is fair to say at times that maybe that they are paying slightly higher compared to their relatives, and this is higher for one simple reason, because they took a longer time in the incubation before they came to the public. So an individual may end up getting more stock-based compensation over the time, and now with the access to liquidity, they are trying to use it. So having looked different scenarios, what I came with a very simple metrics for myself, that I am okay paying money to employees if they are creating value for me. And the metrics I have in my mind is that if you are giving 6 to 8% dilution per year, which is very common in several of the Silicon Valley companies in early years, then that means you need to create value in proportion to that. So, for example, if you want to take a $3 billion compensation as an SBC and grant it to your employees and CEOs and rest of the management, that means for the shareholder, the total value created either in terms of EV by EBITDA or in terms of share price appreciation for rest of the investor is has to be at least 15 to 30 times of that. So as long as they are within this range, I mean, I am okay with SBC. If they are not in this range, then it's a challenge for themselves also, because if share price is not appreciating, that means in order to compensate their employees, they need to give more shares. So the dilution becomes high, and then it becomes, I mean, quite a messy situation also. So irrespective of whatever Alex says about investors in a speculator, I think they are aware that stock-based compensation only works if your stock is actually appreciating, because at the end of the day, the number of stocks you get is a function of dollar. I mean, it's not like I'm going to give you $1,000 this time and $1,000 next time. What is the price of the stock? And then you say, okay, based on today's valuation, you deserve 1,000, or tomorrow 2,000, or tomorrow 500. So, irrespective of whatever they have said in terms of, and I think it has spooked a lot of investors that Alex doesn't care about investors and he has told investors to go away. But in all, I mean, if you hear his interviews before IPOs and see his concern for investors, so I mean, my view is he is pro investors, but he is not like he is not pro speculators in a way, but he is pro investors. So that's my view on stock based compensation. In terms of free cash flow, actually, I'm very happy. I mean, when I look profitability, I mean, I'm not a big fan of profitability as long as you have a healthy cash flow, you have cash in hand, your debt is low, and your revenue is growing. Because every dollar you are getting, you are reinvesting back in your business. So, I mean, I'm not aligned with the Wall Street view that a growing company should have healthy earnings. Growing company will have regular earnings, but revenue has to be consistently growing. The cash in hand has to be good. The operating margins have to be good, and the free cash flow, adjusted free cash flow, whatever way you look at it, it has to be healthy. If those conditions are met, and the company is growing, I mean, I discount profitability in the early part. And guys, we need to understand, like, we have a view at this time that this is the big data market look like. To be honest, frontline where I work with companies to solve these problems, I mean, everybody is just discovering now that okay, there are problems that can be solved. And one thing that has not been tapped, and Palantir is actually very good at it. I've seen in one example in real life uh, that when you have an integrated end-to-end data analytics, clients suddenly come and ask you, "Oh, can you solve this problem for me?" Like we saw in the case of BP, they were doing a production optimization in the North Sea assets using digital twins, and then they expanded as the BP changed their strategy for energy transition. They said, okay, by the way, now the focus is moving on energy transition. Can we do renewables? Can we expand to renewables? Can we do net zero abatement curves? And yeah, I mean, and they expanded pretty fast. So I think that's the uniqueness. So as long as they meet these metrics and they kept capitalizing it, I think I'm okay in terms of journal. I think back to you guys.
Totally, totally. Thank you for that. I love the point about the story about Palantir in 2015 and attracting employees as well as using stock-based compensation to actually attract employees. I think That's a good point. Not lots of people talk about this, but I think people need to put this in context of what's happening today. As well as the point about cash growth, revenue growth. As long as those are growing, then we could maybe give them a pass. So totally agree with you. Good point. Special situation. What are your thoughts on bottom line stock-based compensation for any of them?
Yeah, as I look at stock-based comp as a percentage of sales historically, and it was on the higher side, but if the company can continue to grow its revenue at 40% a year, then I don't mind as much. And the fact that the free cash flow margin was 44%, and I think it'll be greater than, I think it'll be between 45 and 50 by the end of the year. If they can continue to reinvest that cash and continue to grow the business at a very fast rate, then I'm not as worried about stock-based comp. But I could see optically, how sell-side analysts could see it being a high number as a percentage of sales.
Totally. Yes, totally. Good point. Good point as well. Ponce News. What are your thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I think SBC is you just have to deal with it, I guess, because if you don't attract talent, you don't see growth. That is just simple as that. And for a company that is growing for 40% more quarter to quarter, they have to have the amount of talent to support that. Um, and during the call, Shyam said they have a lot of products that they have in mind that they want to develop. So I don't expect the stock-based compensation to decrease, but rather increase. So I know it's probably an unfair comparison, but I just searched up Facebook's stock-based compensation this year, and it's up 35% from last year. No, sorry, 2019, which they spent 6 billion stock-based compensation annually just to attract talent. And you can see from this aspect that not only Palantir is doing this kind of thing, a lot of this tech company, they do the same thing. And yeah, if they don't attract talent, there's no innovation, and people catch up, and yeah, and then we lose money from our stocks. So I think, yeah, I don't expect to see any less, to be honest, and just got to deal with it. I think, yeah, that's my take.
I love how you said we got to take it up on the chin. Yes, I agree. It's tough. And I think I do follow lots of other software companies as well, like Zscaler, for example. Those guys as well. Lot of the Silicon Valley companies do pay a lot of stock-based compensation, and as Shyam talked about it on the call today. He talked about the fact that, we as shareholders or investors, we want the employees to work their ass off, right? Like to work their ass, and for them to work their ass off on the job, right? They need to know they're compensated really well, right? And so yes, it just has to be something we deal with. But as Sachin mentioned, as long as growth is accelerating, we don't have a lot to. I guess we should be worried because we know maybe down the road it would go down. I see Palantir News Daily just reconnected, so I'll probably just hear from you, and then we'll go to our last section for today. Palantir Daily, you want to unmute? Okay. Okay. You might need to reconnect again, Palantir Daily. Okay. We'll move to our final section for today. We're almost done with our call for today. So, for the final section, we just want to talk about what are you guys seeing going forward? So for the rest of 2021, What are you guys looking for the most for 2021 with Palantir? So, are you guys most excited about the forward revenue guidance? Second quarter revenue is going to be 43%. Or are you guys, what do you guys think about the Bitcoin piece? There was a Bitcoin conversation, like, and that was something I mentioned a couple of months ago that I feel Palantir might play a bit of a role because of Peter Thiel, right? Peter Thiel is very pro Bitcoin and believes the US and like Western nations should play a bigger role in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I also personally believe they have something they're working on. So personally, maybe that's something I'm excited about. Or are you guys excited about the IBM partnership? So I believe there could potentially be a lot more synergies between IBM and Palantir for the rest of 2021? Or are you most excited about new contracts? So we'll go around again, and you guys tell me what are you guys most excited about for Palantir, and how are you guys seeing the rest of 2021, especially amidst the volatility that we're gonna get in the stock price. So, I'll start again with you, runaway investor, and kind of go around. Runaway investor, you there? No. Okay, we'll come back to you. Sachin, we'll just go to you. Just
Hey guys, so so Francis and team, like when we, so I think when we look for in terms of like future for Palantir, so what am I most excited? I think one thing which I was wrong about Palantir was I always thought that they will always come from top down, like going from the largest organizations and then to the lower ones and the lower ones. So what thing surprised me when I see the deals like they did with Lilium and Argos, this was very different. Then I also saw something which is very different is that they make these kind of ventures like Syntropy when they went with Mark and they say, okay, you have the expertise in cancer, we have the expertise in data. How can we merge it? So these are like kind of an ideal scenarios that some two different partners comes and they make one plus one more than two, which is very different. Now, what is also different in terms of Palantir, and I also didn't anticipate it earlier, and it is still not updated in my valuation model as of now. That when you see the case of Skywise, I mean, you have Palantir, they built a product entirely over Foundry. This is exactly what Syntropy has done. This is exactly what probably Lilium also does or Argos also does. So what it is telling to competition is that it's not only about saving cost, it's not only about having more insightful decision or predictive analysis. Guys, we can generate extra sources of revenues for you. So if I am a buyer of Palantir, I say, okay, I'm gonna invest $5 million on you. Can you create a revenue source for me which is more than that? Because then if that can happen, I mean, I'm actually getting Palantir for free. Okay, that's how the businesses think. So this is something which is Palantir is creating. And guys, be careful also, like in terms of growth. I think I mean, this is again my personal view that I'm not. My view is that Palantir should see growth much higher than 50%, at least for 1 or 2 years in the next 5 years, because the level and the complexity of problems they are solving for businesses is actually quite big. Okay. Now, when we see some of the other companies, sometimes we see they have a growth of 100% or 150%, and people say, okay, well, this competitor of Palantir had a growth of 150%. Fine. How much total revenue are we talking? How much operating margin are we talking? And how much dependency of partners are we talking? So the moment we start dissecting these things, we then the Palantir uniqueness actually start to looking pretty good. For my own personal guidance in 2021, I had a very simple five operating metrics that I built for myself. The one was revenue. I would expect to see revenue of the order of like 1.6, $1.7 billion by the end. I'm pushing it. My targets are slightly high, but I think it can be achieved. When I see like things in terms of their investment in Bitcoin, I think it's tactical. Uh, I'm not like bullish or bearish. I think it's if businesses are doing it, and so they are also doing it. It's not a position or stand they take. It's they are flexible, so that's good. In terms of IBM, I think I'm personally very excited about the deal, and I was attending in the night the Think 2021, the IBM conference as well. And the reason for that is, see, IBM is a brand, and irrespective of whatever people say, the respect they have in industry is huge. And this company does a lot of R&D. This company files a lot of patents. So when this company comes and they say that Palantir product is a league above, I think that matters a lot to people. And which is and Palantir has already mentioned. I think the kind of sales force they are developing is also very different. Because, for example, one thing which I see I want Palantir to be doing, so I have said it in the past, that Palantir has made several forays in different sectors. They have yet to dominate a sector. So in healthcare, we are seeing that that is in the right direction. They have the chief medical officer, they have done, they did NHS, now they are going into research. But they need to dominate the sector. I think when Palantir start dominating the sector, then we say, okay, Palantir has arrived. Palantir hasn't reached. So, for example, if you see the deal they did with BP, I mean, and if you see that what is available in public domain is that it says that contract was $1.2 billion for 10 years. I mean, that is $120 million a year. Why there is no known oil and gas client for them? So that means the problems they solved with BP was that means there is a section of domain expertise. That means somebody will say, "This is my problem, and how can you solve it?" And this is where I think the sales team, at least few of sales guys, as they have done in in the healthcare and the medical, I think they need a couple of top guys who can think beyond industries and sometimes very in depth in industries to see, guys, this is the back problem. Because industries tend to look what is in front of them. They overlook the structural and systematic issues. So, for example, if you are doing a project and Palantir application, someone says that you apply this, it can save 5%, people will be happy about it. The question is how much money is left on the table. And this is where the expertise is needed. Somebody could say that if the project could be structured in an entirely different way, I mean, we could push even up to 40%. So there is a lot of this invisible money lying around in the organizations. And this is what Palantir needs to tap. And this is where they need a lot of domain expertise moving forward. The moment they do it, they will see more and more new contracts. They are already doing it in spaces. I mean, as I mentioned, that we have already seen in one or two examples, but we need to see more out of it. So, for example, tomorrow, if a company decide to go into renewables, now renewable is a very different game in terms of margins when you compare it with oil and gas. That means, and also, I mean, customers have more choices. So people analytics will become more important. So what kind of analytics service you can offer to your end user customer? And this is exactly where the Palantir will start touching retail customers like me and you, and we'll start seeing the insights going into it. So these are the kind of signs I'm looking moving forward. And guys, I mean, I don't invest a lot in public equities. I mean, I keep a very concentrated portfolios, which is mostly pre-IPO, and most of my investments are in Thiel companies, except SpaceX. So actually Thiel is investing in SpaceX also. Sorry. Uh, so when I look Palantir, I mean, I see a very unique position. I mean, and you know, a lot of time the criticism comes of Palantir is as old as Facebook, which is true. But what Facebook was solving was a consumer internet problem that was present at that time. What Palantir was solving, a problem that was supposed to come in 2 decades from then. So I think that is very different. Also, when we talk about the total accessible market, I mean, we say the TAM is 119 billion. I mean, to be honest, nobody knows what the TAM looks like for Palantir at this point. It's how many concentric circles you are going to go, what are the different kind of problems you are going to solve, and I mean, we everyone has a view that okay, companies are going to invest this much money on big data. I mean, how this view came, I mean, it's people like me who work on these views with companies that, okay, this is how the trend look like. And when we build a trend, we look what's the current problems are, what's the current expenditures are. But when you will actually start going into deep into to solve problems, you will find there are many more things you can do. If you can generate more revenues, business have no issues spending more. So I disagree with the term. I mean, I think it's a distraction, just not to spook sometime your competition. But overall, I see if they get their execution right, and which is where I put most of my risk on Palantir. I think we are onto something here. Back to you guys.
Wonderful, wonderful. Lots. I love how you go through all of those sections. Lots to digest there, bro. Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Sachin, for breaking that out. I believe special situation. I have you up next year. What are you most excited about for volunteer? Oops, you still have some background noise. If you want to just check your background. But yeah, special situations. What are you most excited for in 2021 for the rest of the year for Palantir? And yeah, just give us your thoughts on the rest of the year as an investor.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to keep it brief. The most interesting thing that I'm looking forward to is the growth in the commercial sector. I think there's a lot of white space. I think that partnerships with companies like IBM. IBM needs Palantir more than Palantir needs IBM because of its IBM has a declining operating income situation, and they've tried to hide it by buying back shares, and they need areas to grow. So I think partnering with large commercial sales teams will really accelerate the growth of the company going forward. And I think, I view this as a very long-term story. So, free cash flow margins are good now, but they don't really matter as much. I think, the most important thing here is sales growth and customer growth. So the commercial side is something that I'm interested in, and also international governance, growing accounts with allies, with the new sales team is another thing I'm looking forward to. Bitcoin, I'm not as excited about. It was very small. I think Bitcoin should be more excited that Palantir is involved than vice versa.
I love that. I love that. Great points there. I actually want to hammer on the international growth. If you guys notice from the report today, you would notice, yes, the commercial business actually only grew 19%, which is a little bit disappointing if you think about it. But I think what Alex did mention was the fact, and especially even the non-international growth, they mentioned the fact that in Europe, because of the COVID-19 slowdown, they're way behind in terms of dealing with the pandemic. They aren't seeing a lot of growth from international partners. So I think later on in 2021, I think, yeah, Palantir investors could expect some acceleration in growth from international partners. So, but yeah, I love all the points that you did mention. Palantir news. What are your thoughts? What are you most excited for the rest of 2021?
So I figured out I probably shouldn't talk anymore about the commercial side because Shachin already covered a lot of the areas, so I've not much things to add to the commercial side. But yeah, the international growth, yeah, it was a bit disappointing for me as well. As I think 17 or 19%, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a bit disappointing. But it is what it is. Um, in terms of international growth, I'm I'm more bullish on international government growth actually. If you look at the offices Palantir has, I think they have around 16 or 17 offices, I'm not sure. And they have contracts in every single office, as long as I'm aware. So that is 16 countries, I think. And I think every government has one contract with them. So we're talking about Canada, Australia, basically all the US allies, the Five Eyes. And moving forward, I'm most excited about. I would like to see NATO to adopt Palantir software because back in I think in February they announced that they're speeding up the initiative to adopt a better software OS program across all the allies. Imagine how much revenue that will bring to Palantir. It's just massive. And I think in today's earnings call, they only achieved 1/10 of the potential of the US government revenue. So while the government commercial sector is exciting, I think I'm more excited about the government sector. Yeah, and internet. Let's go back to international growth. Um, I think people are missing out on Palantir's potential in Japan. Um, Japan is a very nationalist country. They don't really like foreign technologies, and but if you look up the data, Japan they don't Japanese company they don't they use traditional methods like Excel spreadsheets, and so the Japanese government they don't use software or they don't digitalize the data as much as the rest of the Western country. And there's a data suggests that they use less than 19% of the data is record with the news technology methods. So that is a lot of untapped TAM in the international space. I've for example, the Japanese market. So yeah, I'm more looking forward to the international growth. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. I love the points you brought up about NATO, Japan, and obviously the international government growth. I think yeah, those are lots of big drivers. Okay, runaway investor, I believe you'd be the last person here. So just give us your final thoughts on what are you most excited for Palantir for the rest of the year.
Okay, yeah. So I'm excited to see on the new partnerships that Palantir builds. It was interesting what you mentioned about that Japanese thing. I didn't really take that in mind. But I think today what was interesting, what a lot of people thought was interesting, but didn't really come to me as interesting, was the whole Bitcoin thing, right? So if you look at Peter Thiel, Peter Thiel has always been a big he's always been a big supporter of cryptocurrencies, especially on how he was one of the reasons that Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, kind of got started or more involved into Ethereum. So knowing that Peter Thiel is so involved in the crypto area, I didn't know that he was going to accept it for Palantir, but it was kind of interesting to see that Bitcoin was getting more accepted, especially that we saw like Mark Zuckerberg. We're seeing like blue chip companies essentially kind of hinting that we're going to start accepting Bitcoin, and that's something interesting to see. But in terms of Palantir, I'm going to keep watching it. Hopefully, new partnerships keep coming. I think it's going to be a strong company tomorrow and for the next few years to come, and I think it's a really good company to watch for.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much. Love that. So thank you so much, all of the speakers. I think with time, we might just take about three participants from the audience. So Wolf,
Yep.
if anyone in the audience maybe has any questions or anything that they found fascinating or interesting from the call today that we maybe haven't highlighted as much, so please feel free to chime in.
Sure. I see one person currently in the queue. I'm happy to bring them up. If you have a question for the panel, I guess go ahead and request. So I'm bringing up Zach McBride. Zach, do you have a question for the panel?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm as big as a bull as any of you guys in the Palantir space, and I know it's just a bunch of kind of bullish kind of comments and positive, kind of comments about Palantir and the earnings call. I was just wondering, just trying to keep it little bit more balanced. Are there any things which we're worried about going forward as far as from the earnings call today? And hopefully that makes sense.
I love that. I love that question. Um, I could just go first, and maybe one or two of the speakers could kind of chime in here. I think for me, it would just be execution risk around the commercial side of things, right? So I think a lot of what we've talked about today has a lot of promise. The pilots, we're hoping that the international commercial growth, and we're hoping more Fortune 500 adopt the software from the pilots and the increase of the sales team. So those increased investments that they're going to be making in the sales team and different projects throughout the year, and all of the hopes that we have, essentially, I think there's execution risk with most of those. So that would be the biggest risk on my aspect of things. And then maybe on a short term basis, I think the macroeconomic factors for the next year could really drag the stock price down, which might affect the stock based compensation and some of those bottom line items. So that would be some of those on my end. I'll chime in maybe Palantir News. I think you have your microphone open here, so you could chime in here on risk that you see, or anyone if you have any risk. No, everyone's pretty bullish.
I mean, there's always a risk, right? And the risk is, when
Yeah.
you have a company trading at above 30 times sales, what we've seen is there are inflation fears. There is temporary inflation, right? Because of lumber, copper, wages, supply chain issues, all the ag commodities, corn, soybeans. You're having commodity inflation across the globe, and because of labor shortages, because people are afraid to work or they don't have a babysitter and they have children at home, there's a lack of participation in the labor force, which is resulting in 20% increases in wages at the bottom level and even at the mid level. So if we do see inflation and rates go higher, all of the higher multiple names will have temporary setbacks. And I'd like to say that it's temporary, because in the long term, right, if revenue continues to grow, these companies will grow into whichever multiples they have in the future. But there is that risk. So I would always have some cash handy, and wouldn't be 100% invested in mid cap and small cap growth for that reason.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So when I see, from my end, what are the risk Palantir is exposed, I think one risk, and we all have to live with it, is uh, Palantir will always be in news for different things. So, for example, we saw in the United Kingdom there was a lawsuit. I mean, it was pretty hollow, but yeah, I mean, it was done. We also saw that in past, politicians have raised concern about Palantir for whatever reasons. Uh, the thing is that these kind of news and the media narrative about Palantir will always stay. I think there will be a time probably when we start neglecting about it, investor community in general. But before that, it will always keep stock somewhat discounted. So I think that is something we need to learn to live with, because so you see the kind of problems they are solving, and they are very open in terms of their position, which is very radical in Silicon Valley terms. Uh, Personally, I'm comfortable with Palantir position than the Silicon Valley position in this regard. So I think that is one thing that will always stay. The second thing, I think, which we don't discuss or anticipate at this time. Now, see, we talk about these companies, these investors who are competition of Palantir. See, when you push them in the corner and you come up with a very good product, you come up with a very good strategy, we cannot just expect them to be defeated like that. And this is where I think the human innovation and ingenuity comes in. Some of these guys will learn how to survive Palantir. Some of these guys will try to work it out. I mean, they are a bunch of smart people. I mean, and a lot of them come from Silicon Valley. So this is what I call like unknown risk. I mean, like, we don't know from which corner this risk will come and what will be the shape and size of it, or what will be the level of threat of it, but it will come. The third risk which I see on Palantir in general is always the execution risk. I mean, I always think that when you have such an aggressive company, you have to go for the juggler. I think this is the time, capture it, and I'm pretty sure. I think whatever Peter Thiel has shared in past and Alex Karp has shared in past, that they can do it. The challenge I see that they have taken like 17 years in incubation. So this is like human psyche. If I spend going from point A to B in 17 years, and if I do faster than that in the next 2 years, I will think I'm doing very good. I mean, this is just my mind is wired to do that. But probably you could have done more better. And I think that is the so that kind of internal calibration of execution, because there is no benchmark present at this particular time. I hope the guidance from people like Thiel and other seasoned investors will keep them in the right direction, and they should not get complacent about it, and they should not reduce any aggressiveness in execution. I mean, once you have all the elements in place, I mean, don't go for 30, 40. I mean, go for 200, 300% growth for a year or two. And it's okay to stretch yourself a bit, because you may not reach 200, 300%, but you may end up reaching 80%. So this is where I would like to see moving forward. I might be too aggressive, but I think that is how you build a $1 trillion company, if Palantir has to be that one day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wolf, thank you so much, Sachin, and all social situations. I love those. And yeah, I think I agree with you guys. Wolf, do you have we'll just take two more. We'll be very specific on two more.
Sure.
Participant, if anyone has questions or something to add that we haven't maybe touched on. So, and then we'll be done for the day.
Sure. I'm bringing up Billy Arenas. He has PLTR Bull in his bio. Billy, can you hear us? Might just take him a second to connect.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Living the dream. What's going on, Billy?
Doing good. Just got off work. So I had a question. I know you guys touched on SBC. So I have a much better understanding of like how Tesla's SBC works with Elon's compensation package, but I was trying to like get a better understanding on how long this is going to affect Palantir's bottom line. Is this going to be a thing that's ongoing for years to come? I know with Q3 it had a huge impact on the bottom line, but I'm just curious on how long it's going to affect it. With that said, even though I know the question might come off as more short-term thinking, um, like many of you guys here in the space, I'm an extremely, long-term investor, like five to 10 years out. I like looking to see what they produce with the quarters and analyzing the numbers and stuff. But in terms of the business, I look at it as like they're executing on all cylinders in terms of the Foundry and Gotham platform. And, I feel years down the road, they're going to trickle down to a more business to customer approach, as well as the TAM increasing. But not to get too off track, would one of you guys just be able to expand upon how exactly and how long this SBC is going to be a continuing uh, expense for Palantir?
Awesome. Does anyone have, right off the bat, anyone have something they want to chime in there?
Yeah, I think I can share my view on this one. So, Sai Billy, thanks for the question. It's a great question, actually. And I was looking into the same, couple of months back. So, when I see SBC, I think there are two models which could emerge in future. So, one model I think which is one of its kind in industry is the AWS model. So, if you go for an AWS job, you will see that even for the very highest positions, your base salary is capped at 160,000, 170,000. I mean, and then you have stock-based compensation bonus on top of that. But given the size of AWS, I mean, they can do less dilution and they can buy back shares. So it's a different story. I mean, so that is one model that could emerge. Okay, the second model that could emerge is like other tech companies who also have uh, stock-based compensation, but they also have like bonuses, the cash bonuses and other benefits. In that case, the impact of stock-based compensation goes down. I think stock-based compensation will stay forever. That's a feature of tech company. How they deal with it, beyond a certain point, that is dilution versus buyback, that will depend entirely on their ability to generate free cash flow. The moment they reach a point that they are generating enough cash and they don't have opportunities to reinvest this cash back, I think that is where you start seeing the dilution probably should taper off. But stock-based compensation should stay forever and most likely will stay forever in Palantir. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, it's anyone's guess, really. It's really anyone's guess because, yeah, we don't know what's on management's mind. But I also fear as they're going to be accelerating staff's sales teams this year. I think they talked about triple-digit growth, so we might expect over 100 new employees before the end of 2021 year. Yeah, it feels like that number is probably going to increase, but as a shareholder, I think, yeah, I want to see it showing in the top line growth, right? Like if top line growth isn't growing as much, cash flow isn't growing as much, then I get worried. But as long as the folks that are getting rewarded are actually working off their ass, right? And then generating those revenue growth that we actually want to see, then I know long term it's gonna die off, right? Or the revenue growth would make up for that. So I don't know if one more speaker has anything to add on that. And then we'll
Yep.
just
So
call it a day.
on the stock-based comp, Palantir is a very small position for me. I like it long term. It's a 10 basis point position, but one of the reasons why I'm not bigger in it, obviously revenue growth is more important to me, but the stock-based comp is extremely high. So there are 535 million options outstanding with a weighted average remaining life of 8 years and an intrinsic value of 9.3 billion, right? So these options equate to roughly 34% of the current shares outstanding, and if exercised, could dilute shareholders substantially. Now, all tech companies, you were saying AWS, Amazon specifically, give most of their bonuses in stock. And what I see employees usually doing is non-executive employees just sell the stock right away. And that's what usually happens. So, I think in the near term, right, one of the reasons why Palantir may not accelerate, as much as one would think based on how fast the revenue is growing, and why its multiple may not expand is because of the stock-based comp. And I don't see it going away. So that is why, it isn't a huge position for me, but I still like the business long term.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I think with that, we might just call it a day. I think we've been over an hour here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Thanks so much, Sachin, Special Situation, Palantir News, Runaway Investor, and unfortunately, we lost Palantir Daily. And ultimately, thank you, Wolf. Yeah, I think thank you. We've talked about the revenue growth, the top line drivers, the bottom line drivers, and some of the most important topics. So please feel free to chime in if you guys have any questions. You could send us tweets or just send a question over through tweets. We'd be happy to. Personally, I'll put a thread out on some of my key takeaways from the report for other people to see. But thanks, guys, and I don't know if you guys have any final words. We'll call it a day.
Just want to say that I appreciate all the speakers coming on. It's really nice for me to, be invested in these stocks and be able to learn from y'all, and to have such a community that comes together and does stuff like this for free. I think it's invaluable.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Also gonna mention in the after hours, the stock's looking pretty good here. So it's nice to see.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, we'll keep the conversations going up on FinTwit. So thanks.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. All right, everybody. Take care. Just so everyone knows, if you're interested in growth stocks in general, Francis, can you mute for a second? A lot of feedback from you.
For sure.
Just so everyone knows, if you're interested in growth stocks in general, I'll be doing another space at 3 p.m. EST tomorrow with Jonah Lupton doing a one-on-one Q&A, taking questions from the crowd. So that's all I got for now. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate